the thrice great, also known as the Egyptian Thoth and the biblical Enoch, which makes him also the great archangel Metatron, who was once Enoch, and raised to heaven as one of two men who became archangels. We are, of course, talking about Hermes Trismegistus, of which we here have an image of all of the various representations of that same legendary figure. Hermetic principles are the foundation of Western esotericism and was revered in the Renaissance. Hermes' Emerald Tablet, and I'm speaking explicitly about the Emerald Tablet, not the other Emerald Tablets, plural, which is a discussion for another time. But the Emerald Tablet is said to contain the secrets of alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone. It is the underpinnings of the Enlightenment, Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, and the Knights Templar. Hello, my friends. I am the Desert Viking, Esoteric Freemason, student of the Rosicrucian tradition and Knight Templar. And today we will be discussing a brief history on the Hermetic foundation of esotericism and the 7 Hermetic principles as laid down in the Kybalion. Before we get started in Hermeticism, kind of a brief understanding of why, I like to say why I do things and what the point of all this is. Last year, I did a thing called the Builder's Workshop, which you can find linked below. It's on this channel. And the Builder's Workshop, the point of that was to kind of lay out the very basics or beginnings of all of the various pillars of esotericism to get into. And it was meant to answer the question, where do I even begin? Because where do I even begin is a common question that you'll hear in lodges from people who are interested in this area of study. Because there are so many paths, rabbit holes, doors to go in, and many of them are false. Many of them lead you astray, and that's part of the journey. And you're just going to have to get used to that. That's part of what you have to do is discern what is resonating with you and what is not. Okay. Now, so that was the point of doing that. The point of doing this video today is to kind of to revisit that, but also, so with the esoteric traditions, Hermeticism is the foundation. So you can't build any pillars and you can't build your temple unless you have a solid foundation. And the foundation that we work in is based on Hermetic tradition and principles, which means that if you are interested in walking down this path, it is going to be important for you to make yourself familiar with what Hermeticism is, some of its history, and to actually peruse and investigate some of these writings yourself. Because by doing so, you're going to have a better understanding of alchemy and the Kabbalah and all the things that are built around the Hermetic principles. So today, what we're going to be focused on is just a little history lesson on where it came from. And then we're going to talk about the 7 Hermetic principles or laws as laid down in the Kybalion, which is not an ancient text. It is actually a relatively new text written in the early 20th century, but is one of the books that I recommend any new student of esotericism and any advanced student. Also, it's good to go back and review those principles, in my opinion. But what I want to make sure you know is where I'm getting my sources from. And this is not trust me bro stuff in terms of I'm not making stuff up and just handing it down. And I'm not trying to claim others' work for myself without giving the references, because there's a lot of that out there, and I disagree with it heavily. And I would like to impart upon you to be scrutinize everything you hear and find where they're getting their sources from. If you know where the source comes from, and that can take some work. Because just because I read something that Blavatsky wrote in the 1800s doesn't mean that she sourced it, because she probably got it from somewhere else, and so on and so forth down the line until you find who originated these thoughts. And they usually come from the same handful of streams. So understanding that is important. Now, all that being said, I'm not a guru. I don't have all the answers. Don't take my word for anything. But make sure you do you're going to have to put in the work as well to go through what we're talking about here and come up with your own conclusions. That is the entire point of what we do. Now, let's talk a little bit about Hermeticism. So we talked a little bit about the Emerald Tablet. If you're not familiar with the Emerald Tablet, I highly recommend you go look up a translation of it. This is not to be confused with the Emerald Tablets, plural. Those are two different things. And we're not discussing the Emerald Tablets, plural. I will leave that opinion to another video and another time. But make yourself familiar with the Emerald Tablet. Now, Hermeticism emerged from Hellenistic Egypt during the late Antiquity era, around 300 BC, and during a time of fusion between the Greek, Egyptian, and Near East traditions. The core teachings are attributed to the mythical figure of Hermes Trismegistus, also known as Hermes the Thrice Great, and they are recorded in the Hermetica, which is a body of texts to include the Corpus Hermeticum. These cover topics on theology, cosmology, spiritual practices, and the emphasizing the oneness of God, the soul's purification, and the mind-spirit connection. Hermeticism was a profound stream of philosophy that would last in prominence until around the 300s of the Common Era, where they were then pushed underground by the rise of the Roman Church. Being Hermeticism was a keystone in the development of Gnostic thought, which emphasizes esoteric knowledge as the path to salvation rather than depending on the church, and sees the soul's true home as the divine realm. From here emerges the Neoplatonic works by the philosopher Plotinus in the 3rd century. So Neoplatonics stem from here, and the Neoplatonics are kind of the first embryo of Western esotericism. His teacher is Ammonius Saccas, who died in 240 of the Common Era, and he was considered the first authentic Neoplatonist according to some Hermetic scholars. Neoplatonists based their mystical philosophies on the Hermetic texts and the writings of Plato. Neoplatonics and Hermeticism were accepted by early church fathers, such as Lactantius, who is pictured here, or what he might have looked like back in the 200s. In his work, The Divine Institutes, he saw Hermetic texts and Hermes as a wise pagan prophet and believed that Hermetic philosophies and the Christian church were compatible. Yes, and the worm turns. This would change after the Nicene Council and the establishment of the Roman Church throughout the late 300s, when the church would then declare Neoplatonism and Hermeticism as heresy. Neoplatonic and Hermetic followers in Greece and Egypt would be displaced/murdered, with the last Platonic academy being destroyed around 529 of the Common Era, after a series of Roman emperors persecuted and removed them. They would end up fleeing into modern Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, etc., and from there morph gradually and contribute greatly into what would later be called the Sabian people of Haran, or the Sabians of Baghdad. And they did this to claim legal protection because the Islam rulers of those states said, if you are not one of the people of the book, you will be killed. This seems to be a common theme amongst religions in the world, as you've noticed. So they claimed to be the Sabians, which were one of the people of the book, and they claimed the Hermetic writings as their sacred text. And while in the Middle East, they contributed greatly to the advancement of science and mathematics. And if you know your history, you know that around this time, the Western Europe was in a period of darkness. It was a dark age. They lost most of their technology as the Roman Empire fell, and things degraded for a number of centuries. Now, Hermeticism itself would then stay, like Gnosticism, underground. Hermeticism would rise again during the Enlightenment period of the 1500s and 1600s. Hermeticism is the foundation of esoteric principles, as I have noted earlier. And the writing, or the book, known as the Kybalion, is, in my opinion, a good gateway into it. The Kybalion was written in 1908 by what was called the Three Initiates. And the Three Initiates is widely held to be the work of a man named William Walker Atkinson, who is pictured here. The Kybalion is not without its critics, however, as it does deviate from the traditional Hermetic in a number of ways, such as its anti-theological stance, where the Hermetica was all about theology, the Kybalion is more about rationalism, and the focus on mental transmutation versus the Hermetica's reverence for the unification of the divine. And that is why I say it's important to understand your references and to understand your sources and their biases, etc. So I'm presenting the Kybalion as a good work. I find it to resonate strongly with me. However, there are critics of it that say this is not Hermetic principles at all. It deviates from it. So this is something to note and understand before you dive into it. Always be skeptical of anyone who does not cite their own references and just tell you to trust them. It is important for people to be able to make their own mind up and not try to present myth or legend as a fact when no such proof exists. There are many things that I believe in that I cannot prove. There are no written records that are available to me, anyhow, that I've heard. But other people have claimed that there are records for this. Just, I'm not high enough level, or I don't have access to those archives, and so on and so forth. So I have faith in some of those people that they're telling the truth, but these are decisions that you have to make for yourself. Now, with that being said, we're going to go over now the Hermetic principles based in the Kybalion. And I highly recommend you pick this up and read it for yourself. I'm going to do a summary. Knowing these 7 principles will change your life if you apply them. And most of them you already know about. Most people know about these. So there's nothing woo-woo magic about it at all. The first law is the law of mentalism. The law of mentalism states that all is mind. The universe is mental. All existence is a manifestation of a universal mind or consciousness. The universe operates according to these laws, and by understanding them, we can influence and create our own experiences. All things are interconnected. By changing our mental states, we can alter our experiences, cultivate positive and constructive habits, and align our mental state to our desired outcome. The second Hermetic law is the law of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. Understanding the inner world allows understanding of the outer world. Our inner world manifests our outer reality. There is a profound relationship between the higher realm and the physical realm. What happens in the cosmos also happens to us internally. The image we have here is it's a version of Levi's as above, so below image from his 1800s work, Transcendental High Magic or Ceremonial Magic, or I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But anyhow, what happens above happens below. What happens inside of us happens without. If we consider ourselves worthless, then our outside world will reflect that. And it's about understanding everything has, everything on the microcosm level is playing out on the macro and vice versa. So, the law of vibration, Hermetic principle number 3. Everything vibrates. Everything is in motion. Everything is in flux. Vibrational frequencies. The lower your vibration, the closer you are to matter. The higher your vibration, the higher you are to spirituality. Your vibrations will either ring true with others or ring sour, and they will avoid you. The higher you vibrate, the fewer will vibrate with you, and the more people will be repelled by you. This is also known as the principle of motion. Everything is constantly moving. The moment you stop moving, you are dead. That is where true stagnation happens. Now, the law of vibration for me personally also means that challenges and obstacles create movement, and that is what creates change, which is good. If you live in comfort and you don't challenge yourself and you never have any drive to do anything, you have no movement, your vibrations will slowly decay, slowly erode into that of dense matter where you will die. So we always want to bear in mind. And again, the higher you vibrate, the less people will be at that frequency. Most people vibrate at a lower frequency towards matter in today's society. That's just a matter of fact and principle. Next Hermetic principle, number 4, the law of polarity. Everything has its opposites. All truths are but a half-truth. All paradoxes may be reconciled. This run right here is one of my favorite principles. What this shows us is that there is not, like, for example, there's no such thing as hot or cold. There's a concept of a hot and cold, but it's the same thing. Temperature. It's all it is temperature. Hot is one end of the temperature spectrum, and cold is the other end, but it's still just temperature. You can apply this to so many things today. Our political landscape is this image right here. It's the same thing with two opposite ends that do the same thing. It's the same object. The tiled floor of a Masonic lodge teaches us polarity, that the human life is checkered with good and evil, but which tile represents good and which tile represents evil? We are both. As we have descended into the material world, we start off as a shard of the divine. We are both male and female, and that's scientifically proven. We're all in the egg as female, and then it's up to the fertilization process to determine our gender. But spiritually, as we're thrust into the physical world, we have to experience duality, because these realms on the tree of life are all about duality. So we are split in half, and a good part of the great work is simply, number one, recognizing that. That by itself is really hard, to know that you're both dark and light, and then to be able to reconcile those and unify them back again, because that is our purpose. That is one of the things we're working towards. And that is a tremendously difficult accomplishment, which is why they call it the great work, and which is why so few masters have actually ascended and done that. And when we say masters, I mean true masters like Jesus and Buddha. All right, those are individuals who figured it out and paved the way and gave us a light. We are both dark and light. Creation is both dark and light. It all stemmed from the same source. That means angels and demons were created by the same source. They are both dark and light. There's a lot of lessons to be learned in this principle right here. And it's one of the hardest to grasp and grapple with, because it will defy dogma that has been conditioned in our minds for centuries. That is the law of polarity. Everything has its opposites. All truths are but half-truths. Remember that, my friends. All truths are only part of the truth. The fifth principle is the law of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides, and everything rises and falls. Everything has a cycle. You might have heard a thing called the fourth turning, the turning of the wheel. The turning of the wheel basically says everything moves in a cycle. So you know that for every low time there will be a high time, and for every high time there will be a low time. It's a pendulum. You can't stop that law of rhythm. You can't stop that cycle. In tarot, we have a card called the Wheel of Fortune, key number 10. It is a wheel. And that states just that. That is a wheel showing you the cyclical nature of the cosmos. When we look up in the sky, the cosmos itself, galaxies are spirals that perpetually move. They spiral. They have a beginning point and an ending, and then they begin again. Everything is a rhythm. The importance of knowing this law is knowing that nothing stays the same, and you never know what tomorrow brings. And just because things are going great today does not mean that tomorrow you will not be challenged. And opposite, if your life is in a low point right now, recognize that as a challenge to overcome. You are not given anything that you cannot overcome, and that pendulum will swing back in your favor. The importance of this lesson is also found in the severity of the swinging. Now, in our world today, that pendulum seems wild. That thing swings so wild and so violently that people get caught in its way. If you're standing in front of that pendulum when it swings at you, it's going to crush you. So you need to learn how to recognize when the pendulum's about to turn and be on the right side of it when it does turn. Additionally, there's one more point I'd like to point out. And the image here is of a pendulum on a string. And so I'm going to try to visually demonstrate this. I don't have a string here, unfortunately, but let's pretend I do. Okay, so if this is the fulcrum and this is the pendulum, see how the pendulum swings back and forth. If you're down here at the bottom, that movement is much more pronounced than if you had climbed up here. The movement up here is barely at all. Movement down here is extreme. How high you climb that rope determines how much you are affected by the law of rhythm, which has to go back to your vibrational frequency. How high can you ascend? Very important law of rhythm. Lesson principle number 6. Something to be applied to our society today for sure is the law of cause and effect. Nothing happens randomly, and every event has a preceding reason. There's no such thing as bad luck. Oh, I have bad luck. My life sucks because other people hurt me. Other people took something from me. Other people did something hundreds of years ago which impacted me today. It's someone else's fault. It's bad luck. The fact of the matter is that nothing in this universe happens without a reason. Something caused something to happen, which causes other things to happen. That's reality. Luck plays nothing in any of that. If you take everything that happens in your life and examine it, you can find sources upstream that are influenced by decisions you have made, both good and bad. And even the smallest of thoughts that you think are inconsequential, like this image here before you that I chose intentionally, the smallest drop of water can cause the greatest of waves. Which means we have to be mindful of what we put in our head and what we speak and our actions. All of those things, our thoughts, our words, and our actions, have profound impact on our surroundings and our lives and the people around us. Profound. Law of cause and effect. Nothing happens randomly. Every event has at least one preceding reason. The wise find those reasons and learned how to correct any ill effects. The last Hermetic principle, according to the Kybalion, is the law of gender. It states that both masculine and feminine qualities exist in everything. Everything has both an active or masculine aspect and a passive or feminine aspect. We must balance those two energies. Gender here refers to principles, active and passive. At its base, it manifests in our physical bodies and genders. In the higher realms, they're expressing qualities, attributes, expressions, and even musical notes. The balance of these two energies is vital. And in our society today, there is no balance. It's been heavily skewed one way, intentionally. And if you skew it heavily in either direction, things will fall apart. And we have only to look out our window to see this happening. Thank you, my friends, for tuning in. This was a basic history lesson on where Hermeticism came from and the review of the 7 Hermetic principles. If you are a new seeker, I highly recommend that you look up the book, The Kybalion. It's a fairly fast read. If you're in a lodge, I recommend having a reading group and going over the Kybalion together as a group. You will find from the Freemasonic standpoint that, again, Hermeticism is under all of our ritual work and all of our thoughts. The Hermetic principles also are in the Holy Bible. They're just not called that, but you can find them if you look. Gnostic texts are full of them as well. This is an area, as it is the foundation. This must be solid before you try to build, in my opinion, the pillars of alchemy or Kabbalah or Gnosticism or any of those other things. We want to get a good Hermetic foundation. Thank you guys. If you liked the video, leave a comment, subscribe if you like this kind of content. I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy the communication as well. If you're interested in the Discord or any of those other things, I will leave links in this video. You are free to join that and to participate in the conversation. We'd love to have you. Until then, it's almost the summer solstice. So as this time of summer comes upon us, let us be thankful for what we have, and may our future quests during this solar time be fruitful. I'll talk to you later.